A trade war, but not with weapons. This time it's about solar panels, prices, and power. Ladies and gentlemen, the numbers are shocking. 123%. That's the duty the United States has just slapped on the solar imports from India now. But what does this really mean? Is this just another policy move or a major blow to India's solar ambitions? Well, it all begins with an accusation. The US government says Indian solar companies are selling products too cheaply in American markets. Too cheap to be fair, too cheap to compete. This price is called dumping, by the way, and when a country believes dumping is happening, well, it responds with heavy duties to protect its own industry. So, the US Department of Commerce stepped in now. After its investigation, it announced a massive 123% anti-dumping duty on India's solar cells and modules. But this is only the half story, because earlier another layer of tariffs called countervailing duty, it was already imposed at about 125%. And now combine the two. The total burden crosses 230%. Yes, more than double the cost. Now for many exporters, this makes selling in the US markets almost impossible. Now overnight, a profitable business can become unviable. So why is America doing this? Here the answer lies in protecting the domestic manufacturing. US solar companies argue that they are being undercut by cheaper import. In fact, groups like Alliance for American Solar Manufacturing, backed by companies such as First Solar, pushed for this particular action. They say that foreign players, they are distorting the market and threatening local jobs at a time when clean energy is a national priority for the US. And the timing, that also really matters. The US is investing heavily in building its own clean energy ecosystem under policies like Inflation Reduction Act. Billions of dollars are being pumped into domestic factories, supply chain, jobs. In fact, tariffs like these, they are designed to give local companies some breathing space while they scale up. However, India faces the steepest hit among the countries investigated. Others like Indonesia or Laos, they also have been targeted, but with a very lower duties. For India, that's 123% rate, and it is sending a strong signal. Now let's talk about the impact, ladies and gentlemen. Major Indian players like Adani Group's solar arms, Waaree Energies and Vikram Solar, they are directly affected by this. The US has been one of their biggest export markets, in fact worth billions of dollars. Well, with such high tariffs, this whole market is shrinking really fast. And there's also immediate financial pressure. Importers in the US must deposit these duties upfront. Well, that increases cost, reduces the demand and forces the whole company to rethink pricing strategies. Here many contractors, they are becoming unsustainable. And then comes another twist, by the way, a critical circumstances clause. Yes, this allows the US to apply duties retroactively for up to 90 days. So that means that even shipments already delivered could now face heavy taxes. So for exporters, this creates a sudden and unexpected liability, right? Another question, what are Indian companies doing about it? Well, very smartly, they are pivoting. Well, looking for new markets in Europe and West Asia where demand for renewable energy is rising and trade barriers are relatively low. In fact, countries in these regions, they are aggressively expanding their solar capability, creating fresh opportunity. And yes, at the very same time, India itself offers a massive fallback. The country has set an ambitious goal that is about 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel capacity by 2030. So that means huge domestic demand for solar equipments. Government schemes like production-linked incentives, PLI, they are also encouraging the local manufacturing, which could help companies shift focus inwards. But the challenge do remain. India still depends on imports, specifically from China for the key solar components like wafers and cells. So while India exports the finished products, parts of its supply chain, they are still globally linked. And any disruption, it will affect the entire ecosystem. Zoom out a little, and this is not just about solar panels anymore. It's about global competition. Clean energy is the new geopolitical background, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, countries are not just racing to adopt the green power, but they are also controlling how it is produced, what is the price, and how it is going to be distributed. Now, this particular move by the US continues a pattern. Over the past decades, similar tariffs have been imposed on solar imports from countries like Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand. And now India is firmly in that line of fire. The big question is, what happens next? This is still a very basic decision, but final ruling. They are expected later this particular year from the US authorities. And if that is confirmed, then these duties could really stay for years, reshaping trade flows and forcing the companies to adapt permanently. Well, for India, the path forward, it is clean but challenging. Diversify export markets, strengthen the domestic demand, invest in full supply chain manufacturing, and stay competitive globally.